Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. And the country in our hearts. We're spotlighting a special series this week, a year-long reporting project to tell the story of Nashville's Kurdish population, the largest in the U.S. WPLN's Rose Gilbert has taken us from Nashville to Kurdistan, and that's where we pick up the story today in episode 2, heading in the mountains, where Kurds fled before ultimately becoming refugees.
And this is the older village, right here. This is where they would live. Like you see the sign, welcome to Chalke.
I'm with Aran in his big, heavy SUV, perfect for rough mountain roads. We've arrived in the village of Chalke, the place that Aran and Nash's family fled so many years ago. As we drive down a steep gravel path lined with lush flowering bushes and tangled vines, he points out a fenced-off piece of land.
So behind here is our plot too. This was where Grandpa kept a bunch of apples. Grape, apple, and walnuts were there, I remember. Because even when my dad was alive, he took good care of it.
He tells me that even after the village was abandoned for good in 1988, people kept coming back here to tend to the land. As the area got safer, it became a gathering spot for picnics and celebrations. Now, Aran takes stock of the land, pointing out fallen branches, orchards choked with undergrowth, walking paths lost to brambles and long grass. To me, it looks pretty, if a little overgrown, but it certainly isn't how Aran remembers it.
Oh, then it was all tidy, neat, everywhere was clean. You wouldn't see extra twigs and all of that. Like, you wouldn't see this mess. 4 years of not touching it. What do you expect,
4 years of this place growing wild, with no one allowed in to weed or water or plant or harvest. Because for years, this place was a war zone. Chalke sits near the border between Iraq and Turkey. That means it often gets caught up in clashes between the Turkish military and the PKK, a Kurdish militant group that's been at war with the Turkish government for decades. A few years ago, the Turkish military went after the PKK, invading this corner of Iraqi Kurdistan and turning Chalke into a battleground. This is the first year anyone has been allowed back.
You'll have info.
Hello, family.
Just down the road, a happy surprise.
Hello. Hi. Hey. Oh my God.
A gaggle of cousins, uncles, aunts, little nieces and nephews.
Hello. Rumi.
Members of Aran's family, here from Nashville. They visit Kurdistan when they can, but it's a long, expensive trip.
What's up, buddy?
So Aran hasn't seen some of them in years.
You remember me?
They carry armfuls of fruit plucked from surrounding trees, still yielding despite 4 years of neglect.
Yeah. We tried. There wasn't much.
A pair of Aran's great aunts show me how to crack open a pomegranate on a stone curb.
Oh.
Sitting in the sunshine, eating pomegranate seeds and watching this far-flung family catch up, I'm struck by how much this small bit of land means to them. It's an inheritance passed down generation after generation. We eat our fill of fruit, then go wash our hands in the small stream that runs through the old village.
And this water comes obviously from somewhere up this mountain.
Aran stoops to drink a small handful of water and wash his face with careful, practiced motions. It's a small ritual he completes every time he comes here. After we wash up, I follow Aran into the trees.
I know we're in the vicinity.
Any path that was here has long since disappeared, and burrs and thorns catch on our clothes as we go. But after a short walk, we come across the ruins of a cottage. It's crumbled and covered in moss. And then there's another, remains of the old village. Aran points up ahead, to a small pile of stones at the peak of the hill. That, he tells me, used to be his grandfather's home.
So maybe built in the 50s or 60s?
Yeah, just about, I would say.
So things really, it's not an ancient ruin, it's a recent ruin.
Yeah, exactly. I wish it was much cleaner. You'll be able to just wander about. But see, this connects with that one down there. And then our land is right above a creek. So it's and this area was very good because it was resourceful. Water, caves, right? So in times whenever there would be, let's say, a military operation with the bats, before the fleeing, people would just scatter into the caves, right? Or it's always good to have water close to you in times of that. So this place was this is why they didn't want to let go of it so soon.
Water for the farmland, caves for the people.
Exactly.
We stayed there a while, staring at the cairn of stones where Aran's grandfather used to live. Illuminated by the late afternoon sunshine, it seems to float above the overgrown village, suspended along a horizon of soaring mountains.
It's beautiful.
I'm spending the next few days here in Chalke. Aran is taking me on a journey, a retracing of sorts, from crumbling ruins to intimate family dinners and through narrow mountain passes. We're taking a journey into this land, a land for which so much blood has been spilled, a land this family thought they had lost forever. But also, I'm going to take you into the history of this family and the burdens carried by each generation, the burden of what they lost and the burden of salvaging what's left. I'm Rose Gilbert, and from Nashville Public Radio, you're listening to The Country in Our Hearts. This is episode 2, The Ones Who Face Death. Old Chalke, a place Aran and Nash's family once fled. The people do still live here, just a few miles down the road, actually, in a village built by the survivors of Saddam Hussein's All-on-Fall campaign, a place they call New Chalke. That's where Aran and I are headed.
So what are you dropping off now?
First, though, we're stopping to drop off some passports and visa paperwork at an aunt's house.
Oh, it's just some paperwork. I forgot to hand it to her. She has to get done. It'll just be a quick drop-off.
Oh, yeah.
Have you had breakfast? You're not hungry?
We slip off our shoes at the door and head inside to enjoy a hearty breakfast spread. Fruit, cheese, yogurt, lavash bread, and small tender cuts of lamb. Aran and I aren't the only visitors either. The house is full of more family who also happen to be in town from Nashville, including Aran's Aunt Fauzia, his father's sister. She joins us for breakfast, taking a seat next to me. As we eat, she begins to tell me about her brother, Aran's father. During the time I'd spent with Nash and Aran, I had started to get a picture of their father, the Peshmerga commander, the warrior, the larger-than-life patriarch. But Fauzia knew him first as her big brother Knife. She remembers the day he snuck off to join the Peshmerga. He was only about 13 years old.
So I remember vividly. They went to him and it was another villager. They both joined at the same time. They heard that there was Peshmerga forces in Qumri, so they went, obviously, sneakily. She's like, but I was the first one to know, and I gave the news to my parents. And that was the reaction she did. She said, that's the reaction my grandma, her mom did.
Mimicking her mother's panic, she claps her palms to her cheeks and buries her face in her hands.
She goes, oh my God, okay, so now I can just label my son dead. She's like, her mom was like, oh my God, so now I can just consider him a martyr, you know?
He came home after enlisting with a big rifle on his back.
She's like, half of the muzzle, like not half, but about an inch or two of the muzzle, you would see it had dirt in it from dragging it on the walk. But she's like, and then we all just started crying.
Knife begged his parents for forgiveness, again and again. But he didn't regret joining.
She said he told his mom, he was like, Mom, if I don't, and the next person, then we won't ever have a Kurdish identity.
While reporting on Nashville's Kurdish community, just about everyone I met had a father or uncle or brother who had been in the Peshmerga, or they'd been a fighter themselves. Some had joined as teenagers, but 13 still stuck out to me as young. After signing up, Naif was gone for months at a time, off in the mountains fighting for the Kurdish cause, with only the occasional letter to his family. When he could visit, it was a huge relief and a cause for celebration. And then he would leave again.
Whenever he would leave, she said we wouldn't clean the house for a day or two. Because, it was kind of like a farewell. We didn't know if he would come back. And she said there'll be days sometimes, a day or two, sometimes we wouldn't even eat. Because all we were, everybody was worried and crying. Because one, young, and two, he's in the Peshmerga. Which, the definition in front of death,
The word Peshmerga translates roughly to one who faces death. They are mythic, heroic figures in Kurdish culture, underdog warriors fighting for freedom against bigger, stronger opponents. Fawzia tells me that when any Peshmerga came to town, they were welcomed as heroes. Villagers risked the wrath of the Ba'athist regime to feed and shelter them as best they could.
She said, if you own one chicken, if you knew the Peshmerga were coming, she said that day they would make sure to slaughter that chicken and cook it for them because they knew the hardship that they were going. They knew they were in the mountains. They didn't enjoy a good hot meal.
And if it wasn't safe to come out into the open, the local women would smuggle provisions to the fighters in their mountain hideouts. Stuff that was easy to carry, like dried yogurt, rice, the thin lavash bread we ate for breakfast. Fawzia says the Iraqi soldiers stationed in the region caught on pretty quickly, but many of them let it happen anyway. She remembers two guards in particular were especially lenient.
They were very, very generous. And she said a lot of times they would even, when they were out on lookout, they would turn their eye when the Peshmerga would come into town.
Naif joined the Peshmerga as a young teenager and fought in the Iraq-Kurdish wars of the 60s and 70s. He rose through the ranks rapidly, from a regular fighter all the way to a general. The life of a Peshmerga required sacrifice. Naif sustained serious gunshot and shrapnel injuries 7 separate times, at least one of which required hospitalization in Iran. When Naif got married and started a family, they were constantly on the run from the Iraqi military. And when his children and wife came to America, he didn't go with them. Instead, he stayed behind to fight in a brewing civil war. So Aran and Nash grew up with a faraway hero for a father. Aran only knew his face from a photo his mother had given him when he was very little.
She said you carried it with you, it was with you 24/7. She's like, and when we decided to take it away from you, threw up such a big fit that, we had to bring your picture back.
Naif visited the family in America for the first time when Aran was 3 years old. Now, Aran pulls out his phone to show me a photo of the moment they reunited at the airport.
Yeah, that's me and my father right here. And this is the first time he came to America. This was 1993.
Aran's father is wearing a khaki uniform and a camouflage field jacket. He has a traditional turban and a thick mustache. He's smiling at a 3-year-old Aran, who stares back at him, transfixed.
So she's like, that's why you were staring. You're like, that's the man in the photo that I've been carrying around this whole time.
Years after Naif's first trip to America, Aran went to visit him in Iraq. It was his first time in Kurdistan, and a lot of that trip was spent on the road. As they drove, Aran says that Naif would point out the places he'd fought battles, historic landmarks, and villages their family had lived in before Aran was born.
That was our time to chit-chat, because whenever we would get to the destination, people would flood.
Aran tells me the drive to the village always makes him think of visiting his father.
People would come around. Now it was their time. So mine and our time was mostly the car ride.
After breakfast, the paperwork is sorted out and Aran and I get back in the car. On the drive to New Chalke, he tells me more about that first trip to Kurdistan. Naif was a prominent member of his tribe, and that meant his time was always in high demand. With little Aran at his side, he attended weddings and funerals, presided over land deals, and helped resolve disagreements of all sorts.
He used to say, God blessed me and put me in this position, so it's my duty to go, serve my people. I mean, it was his role.
It's a role that Aran has inherited. Despite growing up pretty much entirely in America, he is the only one of his brothers or sisters living in Kurdistan.
Yeah, I take pride in it, right? At times I feel kind of like a pressure, because now you're in both worlds.
In 2013, Aran's father died from a heart attack, and Aran made the decision to move to Kurdistan. He felt a responsibility to preserve his father's legacy, the legacy he'd fought and bled for. This is his family's land, but it's not where he grew up. Aran still feels very American.
But, I'm very open-minded, Western-minded, and then you come here, but still, you still feel that kind of gap. All I remember is America growing up.
Today, though, Aran's the one who spends his time on the road, always headed to some invitation or appointment, constantly taking calls from people in Kurdistan and America alike. Friends and family who have questions, problems, or are just looking to stay connected.
I have that, I won't say it's a burden, but I have that pressure on me too, to where I have to attend. Because I'm here, I'm his only son here. And it's very cultural, So, but I've grown into that. And I got that from him.
Aran is not the only one who has felt called to return to these mountains. There are others of his generation, members of his own family who have come back to live in and rebuild their father's homeland. As it turns out, Chalke is a difficult place to leave behind, even for the ones too young to remember leaving in the first place. More after the break.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org. Funding for This Is Nashville comes from Burr & Foreman Law Firm, serving clients with transactional, litigation, and regulatory needs. Discovering how each client defines a win and working with them every step of the way to achieve it. Burr.com.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville, a special broadcast. We're on the second installment from The Country in Our Hearts, which tells the story of our Kurdish neighbors. WPLN's Rose Gilbert picks up the story, and when she wraps, we'll have time for a few questions with the project's cultural advisor. Back to episode 2.
New Chalke is just a few miles away from the old village we visited earlier. It sits further down in the valley than Old Chalke, on a flattish stretch of land right on the main road. The homes are mostly pale stucco with walled gardens. Aran tells me that much of the village was built in the 90s with money sent back from relatives in Nashville. This time of year, it's bursting with green. Roses and sunflowers, trellises of grapes, trees heavy with figs and pomegranates. Kids ride bikes and chase each other through the dusty streets. We drive with the windows down, and Aran keeps spotting people he knows and stopping to talk.
There goes Zozo.
Zozan is one of Aran's cousins on his father's side of the family.
Hi, I'm Zozan.
Rose, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Sorry.
She wears sunglasses and a printed cotton house dress, floor-length and traditional. Like Aran, Zozan grew up in Tennessee. That's where she met and married her husband, whose family is also from Chalke. And that's not as much of a coincidence as you might think. After fleeing in 1988, dozens of families from this one little village ended up in Nashville.
That's my husband, Zindan. She was with us at Jelka.
Good, how are you?
I'm Zindan.
Rose, nice to meet you.
Hey, Rose, nice to meet you.
After the COVID-19 pandemic, they packed up their lives and their 3 little daughters and moved back to Kurdistan, looking for a slower, groovier, more traditional pace of life. Zozan is a homemaker, and her husband works remotely, running a taxi company back in Nashville. They're building a house of their own, but for now they're living in her grandfather-in-law's empty home.
You want to tour our house?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We'll tour our house.
It's pretty bare bones. There's little furniture besides a handful of sleeping mats, shrouded in mosquito netting, and no hot running water. Still, Zozan loves it here.
It's very peaceful. Like I said, the idea of moving here was just to pause and enjoy our children, like enjoy life.
She spends her days homeschooling her kids and tending to the garden.
Here, I feel like we just wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee. It takes about an hour, 2 hours for the kids to wake up, and then we do our homeschool. It's very relaxed here.
As we talk, Zozan makes bundles of holy basil tied with twine and shows me which figs are ripe enough to eat. One of her daughters teaches me how to crack open and peel fresh walnuts, which stains the tips of our fingers a deep brown.
No, if you eat this part, it's the head.
If you eat the skin, it's definitely bitter.
I'm lucky. It's harvest season, which means I'm here just in time to sample some of the best fresh fruits, greens, and nuts this part of the world has to offer. Foods that have grown here for centuries, picked and eaten by generations of this family. As the sun sets, the mountains turn pink and gold all around us, and soon it's time for dinner. We eat on the floor, sitting on a carpet with a sheet of plastic over it to keep everything tidy. Dishes of chickpeas, chicken, lamb, and rice are set out family style alongside plenty of bread and fresh greens. Seated across from me is Zozan's father, Ayub. His face is clean-shaven and lined from years of working in the sun. He wears a checked dress shirt and a tightly folded turban. As we eat, I realize Ayub is the uncle Nash talked about when he told me the story of how they fled in 1988. The uncle who came to warn them, who told them they needed to leave. Now, Ayub tells me the full story, with his daughter Zozan translating. And it follows the same basic rhythm as Nash's story. The army came, they had to run. But in Ayub's telling, I hear something else. Memories, lost along the way from Chalke to Nashville. And a silence between these 2 generations. It was the summer of 1988, and Ayub had a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. He was the eldest of 3 brothers. The other 2, including Aran's father, were away, fighting for the Peshmerga.
ام خودت ریکوپیک بین ام گلی بین چیکی ما بوری پیکو دهبی منو برات خو دیال بابیجید بابی مان همیا بوری مهبی کو اسم شولت کرد جورا ما بصونه هی بيطلب مدا.
So the brothers entrusted him with the family, with their own families, and then especially his mom and dad.
In his brother's absence, it was Ayub's responsibility to care for their land, their animals, their aging parents, and their wives and children. It was a tense time. Remember, Iraq was at war with Iran, and now the Iraqi army was gassing entire Kurdish villages. They'd done it to Halabja, and now people feared they were coming for Chalke.
So when they heard the news of Halabja, shortly after, a month after, 2 months after, everyone started fleeing. There was no, if you had a way, you would leave.
Ayub and his family hung on for weeks after everyone else was gone. Then, one summer morning, Ayub was climbing a mountain outside the village when he saw them.
Oh, wow, all the way from over there, Chelkaseri. So he saw from binocular how many soldiers were lined up here. There was tanks, soldiers, all preparing to come that way towards the Chalke village.
The Iraqi army had set up camp here, on the stretch of land where we were now sitting.
So from this whole section, there was no homes here then. So it was all tents lined up and then their tanks.
A few soldiers spotted him looking and called out to him.
وقتی هشتی امورارین قلت الصوت مسربي شوية كيلفيدي مقابل بيجوفو من برخده جارك عسكري عراقي هم عادي تجي كذي قدي أنفال را كذي ويا همي برافن ينا رافت كيمياء هاويجل.
They yelled, there's an anfal, so if you do not leave your towns, you will be gassed. Chemical gases.
Ayub went back to Chalke and gathered everyone as quickly as he could. This is the part Nash told me about.
Okay, so so they started walking by foot with children. His two parents, and they were both of old age, mother and father. The children were, God, I was 3 years old, Dad. Assis albim. Hashti. Yeah, so he had I think he had like 2 to 3 babies on his back, so carried in a little baby carrier. Then he also had his rifle.
About 15, 16 kids in total, he says, nearly all under the age of 10.
Oh man. So all those children, imagine all those children.
She sounds surprised.
Do you have any memory of this?
I only have memory. I have a very, very small memory of this, but I clearly remember hearing bombs, blood. I remember seeing, because I was 3 years old. So I do remember some of it.
The Iraqi army had been in the area for weeks, and so the family had known they'd need to leave soon. They had prepared by stashing rugs and blankets and other essentials in the mountains, near the spring that fed their village. When it came time to run, the family met at the stream, the same place where Aran had washed his face earlier today. They followed it up to its source, the spring.
And then they fled from where you went today, by that water, the river, and then so they went all by foot. So he'll take you there tomorrow.
The walk was slow and exhausting, with Ayub at the back to make sure no one was left behind. But they made it, to the mountains, to the Turkish border, and to relative safety. They camped there overnight. In the morning, they woke to the sound of explosions echoing through the mountains. The Iraqi army had started bombing neighboring villages with chemical weapons.
Once they left, once they heard the bombs, there was no turning back.
Ayub begins to tell the next part of the story. I turn to Zozan to translate, but find her staring at her father, her eyes suddenly full of tears.
So he had said, this is emotional for me. So my nov jashara, what you nagutawa? So the Iraqi were, the Iraqi were patrolling the mountains. Yeah. Oh wow. So So mind you, a couple of nights before they fled, my dad knew. He said we knew that we would never come back here.
When they fled, Ayub's wife realized they had left behind something important, a hand-carved cradle. So he and a friend took a mule and snuck back, down through the mountains to Chalke.
So he had to come back for the cradle, and then while he was here, he said there was some food, some crops that he had taken for the family.
Zozan is crying quietly now, and it seems like a struggle to keep talking.
And a bag of clothes, and then so they came to get those stuff. So that night they had gone the same night.
I tell her we can stop if she needs to, but she waves me off, determined to keep going.
Yeah, it's okay. No, it's okay.
Whose cradle was it?
It was my brother, who his name is Talon. He recently passed away, actually.
Sorry for your loss.
It's okay.
Please, really, at any time.
No. This is actually good. I've never heard it. I've never heard it in this detail. Have you, Aran? I haven't either. Yeah. Go ahead.
It struck me that Zozan didn't know exactly what had happened all those years ago. She'd lived through it, but growing up, she tells me her parents didn't want to talk about it. No one wanted to revisit these memories or put that burden on their children. But Ayub is talking about it now, stoically retelling the details of this terrible day. That only changes as he starts to tell me about his brother, Aran's dad.
He said he loved his brother more than his own self. Brothers can be replaced. I now know your pain, Dad. Yep. Inshallah, he's in a better place. Inshallah.
I realized I'd become a witness to an intense moment of connection here. A father digging out painful details of the family history, and a daughter reaching out to reclaim them. And just like that, the moment ends.
A lot of amazing memories, and as you could see, he's very emotional at this moment. But
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing.
All right. Thank you.
He's telling me he's done talking.
I'm sure he has so much to tell, but I think this was so, kind of impromptu for him. He was, very I'm sure he could go on for hours. Yeah.
We all kind of go quiet for a moment, listening to the crickets singing outside and the kids playing in the next room. More than 30 years ago, Ayub evacuated his entire family from this place, the threat of Halabja ringing in his ears. Now, he was visiting his daughter and her family, who have come back to Kurdistan to build their lives on the same bit of land where Iraqi soldiers once told Ayub they were going to bomb him.
He feels a sense of freedom of being in your own land. He enjoys the kids being here because he knows that this is their home, this is my home, this is their father's home, and that they're able to speak their mother tongue without being scared.
After my conversation with Zozan and Ayub, it's late, but the night is far from over. I chat with Helene, the youngest daughter of Aran's aunt Fauzia. She's in her late 20s, with long, carefully straightened hair and big hazel eyes.
You don't pass up on my aunt's tea because she makes the most amazing tea in the village.
It's rare to have so much of the family together in the village, reunited from across oceans, and so they stay up late to soak in every minute of it. They catch up over tea and cigarettes. A few older women bring out endless trays of sunflower seeds and tiny pastries filled with jam and fresh walnuts, plucked from the same trees we visited earlier. This hospitality is a familiar ritual, something these ladies learned from their mothers and aunts and grandmothers, something they're determined to pass on to their children and grandchildren. The family stays up like that for hours, just enjoying each other's company. I can't keep up, and I'm eventually sent to bed sometime around 2 a.m.
Good night.
I bunk with Helene and one of her cousins. We sleep side by side on thick mats called dusheks. Helene explains that, at first, the family wanted to give me my own room.
But I was like, no, I want to give her that whole vibe of when you visit Kurdistan, you visit your family's home and you all sleep in the room together. And, you're sleeping on the dusheks on the floors. There's a whole, nostalgia that comes with that as well.
Chalke is a place for nostalgia, a touchstone for this family and so many others, a place people travel across oceans to get back to where they can touch the land, eat the fruits, sleep side by side on dusheks. Small rituals that piece together what was destroyed so many years ago. The house finally falls silent, except for the sound of crickets and jackals outside. I fall asleep thinking of guns and cradles and pomegranates. In the morning, Aran is waiting outside with his car to show me the place where Ayub took their families that terrible day in 1988. I've heard the story of this family's escape through the mountains, from Nash and now Ayub. Today, we're retracing their steps. Helene has decided to join us for our uphill hike. So we set off, passing through the old village, keeping on until we reach a town called Hirure.
sound of the beautiful water, greenery, pomegranates everywhere. The village is waking up, right? I bet they're all inside cooking some breakfast.
We start by the stream, the same stream that feeds Chalke. It's a postcard of a place, all waterfalls and green woods, and recently it's become something of a tourist destination. They've put in a gravel pathway and a few sets of stairs. Even with these modern conveniences, we start to lose our breath pretty quickly. I try to imagine what it was like before for Ayub, hiking this trail with 3 children and a gun on his back. And then for 12-year-old Nash, carrying his little sister to safety. As we keep going, the path narrows and the trees start to thin out. We're really in the mountains now, with sheer cliffs rising on either side of us. If we keep going, we'll be in Turkey.
It seems like a gateway, a door out. I guess that's the way I picture it.
Today, this is a scenic hiking path, but in 1988, it was the path to safety.
It makes you realize, like, we have endured a lot, right? And I guess so the decision for me to come back here and help with either way I can makes it mean something for me. This is how we got here. This is the backstory. So it means something. It's history, right? You have to hold on to it, either good or bad.
After about 30 minutes, we come across a rocky overhang in one of the cliff sides, just high enough off the ground for someone to sit underneath. This is where the family camped overnight, and where they heard the chemical bombs drop the next morning.
And remember, especially in mountainous areas at night, sound travels, right? So that's probably something, a sense where like, hey, shh, you hear that in the distance?
Just a few steps later, we're there, the source of the stream, the place the families met before crossing the border to Turkey. This is where the path ends. Haleen and I leave our shoes on the side and dip our tired feet in the ice-cold water. The same water that flows down to Old Chalke, to the new village where Zozan and her family live. At one point, a herd of sheep and goats appear from the mountains, along with their shepherd, an older man who wears a Kurdish suit and a baseball cap. He stops to talk to Adan, asking him what tribe he's from and who his parents are. Sure enough, he knows the family, which Haleen says is pretty typical. Everyone knowing everyone. That was how life was for her parents' generation here.
You just have to understand, they grew up together in all aspects of their life. They were in the villages together, they washed their clothes together, they showered together, they went to get milk together. And then the war came and they ran for their lives together. They had to survive together with their kids on their back. And then they're in this refugee camp, and it's sad times, but they're together. And then when we were refugees to America, that's, again, together. It's all about the togetherness for them. Again, they had to survive, as Kurds always do.
They survived and came to Nashville, Tennessee. But Nashville is a lot bigger than Chalke. You can't know everyone there. That togetherness was splintered irreversibly when these families fled. It's something they come back here, to Kurdistan, to try and reclaim by visiting their old orchards and staying up all night talking. It's why Haleen and Fawzia and Ayub come here all the way from Nashville. It's the reason why the cousins who work and go to school in Zaho or Duhok still live here during summers and on weekends. It's why Adan is building a home of his own here, on top of a hill on the outskirts of the new village. It's still a work in progress, but I can already tell it will stick out as impressive. 2 stories tall, with big terraces, a swimming pool, and sweeping views of the valley. Adan shows me around the garden, which is dotted with frail, freshly planted saplings, pomegranate trees that Adan brought all the way from Halabja. I ask him why he's building this house. After all, he spends a lot of his time in the city or on the road, and he already has relatives he can stay with when he wants to visit the village.
It's home. At the end of the day, like, whoever comes back, my whole family's in the West, obviously. But whenever they come, they like to be close to here. And it's like, I guess to keep my family's, I won't just say legacy, but to keep, my father's home, his door open.
Preserving his family's legacy in Chalke, keeping his father's door open. This is the responsibility that Aran has taken on by coming back to Kurdistan, a responsibility he's fulfilling by building this monument of a home on a hill. Standing at the edge of his unfinished swimming pool, looking out at Chalke below, I think about the life Aran left behind in Nashville. His mother, his brothers and sisters, his friends, the place he grew up. Aran came to Kurdistan out of responsibility to his family and to his father. But that's not the only reason he left Nashville. He left Nashville because he was trying to get away from something. He was trying to get away from trouble. Next on The Country in Our Hearts, Episode 3, Safety Zone.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We just heard the second episode of Nashville Public Radio's new podcast, The Country in Our Hearts. It tells the story of how Nashville came to be home to the largest Kurdish community in the United States. And now we are joined in the studio by Dilman Yasin, who served as the project's cultural advisor. Welcome to This Is Nashville.
Thanks for having me, Blake. This has been such a treat to be a part of.
Well, we couldn't have done it without you, or would have been... We would have, it would have been less than what it is. So listen, I want to start off with kind of the little obvious cultural moments. Like there's a lot of emphasis on food and landscape and kind of the rhythms of life, like in a village in Kurdistan. What are those cultural moments and elements help us understand about Kurds who are living here in Nashville now?
I think a lot of those elements provide a good sense of like storytelling. Kurds are known for storytelling for generations because of oppression and lack of our own being able to identify ourselves in the regions that we're in. Being able to pass down stories is so important for us. And so when we're hearing this specific story and other stories, it helps give us a sense of home to those of us that have been in America for so long.
Well, go deeper on this because, the name of this podcast is the Country in Our Hearts because you're not going to find Kurdistan on a map. Mm-hmm. It is a country that really does live in the hearts of the people who are Kurdish. So you think that it's almost these cultural elements are more important because there's not something to point to on a map or a flag.
Absolutely. I think just because it's not on a map doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Our culture ranges from what we wear to what we eat to how we talk to our little quirks that we have about ourselves that are so different from everyone else in the Middle East. We're a minority in the Middle East. However, we are such a large population outside of the Middle East as well. So keeping hold of those traditions and cultural pieces of us is so important, especially living in the diaspora for so long.
Not that you have to choose a favorite, but if someone is listening and thinking, I should understand the Kurdish culture more. I know there are Kurdish restaurants and such in town. Where would you point them to?
I think Edessa is really great. House of Kebab is great. There's a new restaurant called Tashti.
I just
Cafe.
went.
It's so great. Yeah.
I had Kurdish coffee, which I didn't know it was a thing, and it was. Can you explain how that's made? There was something about sand.
Yeah, so that Kurds and Turks make it in sand. It's heated in sand. It has such a rich flavor to it. And it's drinking in very small increments, so you don't need a whole lot.
I noticed it was not a big cup.
Yeah, and it's typically served hot. You don't really drink it iced. So whether it's 100 degrees outside or a cold winter day, you drink it hot as is, and it just gives you the same warmth no matter the season.
Well, no, Tashti it was a great experience sitting on the little pillows on the floor too.
Yeah.
So during this episode, we'll get away from the food, but during this episode, we hear the story of how you have this family fleeing from the Iraqi army in 1988. They ended up in Turkey and then eventually in Nashville. And as I understand it, your family left Kurdistan that same year. Was your story similar to this story we just heard?
Absolutely. I think the majority of Kurds here my age, maybe a little bit younger or older, resonate very well with the story. My family also fled in 88. We heard noises from the mountains of other Peshmergas who were serving to protect the villages, that Saddam was on his way, his troops were on his way. And as soon as we heard that, the elders of the villages told everyone to pack up and let's go. And it's not packing up your luggages. It's literally picking up your kids and running as fast as you can. It was a very imminent threat, and it was not something that you took lightly. People had caves and places in the mountains that they already had safe places for.
Because they knew this was a possibility?
This was a constant thing. It was always in our hearts for the past year or so of the threats that were coming. And so it wasn't something that we didn't know. It was just something that we were waiting for. And so hearing it, having our parents literally pick us up, take what they could, and literally running for the mountains was something that I think a lot of Kurds here can resonate with.
But are those stories told? I mean, obviously, we just listened to one. It sort of sounds like, oh, these are the family stories that our Kurdish neighbors must share. But at one point in the episode, we hear, Father Ayub telling his daughter the story of how their family left, and it's very clear she had not heard these details, and he clearly didn't want to share any more about them. Was it just so traumatic that it's difficult to talk about at all?
Very much so. I think anytime I speak with my parents or elders in our family, I find out something new. Yeah. It's not something you just kind of sit over tea and bring joy to a conversation. It's something will trigger them to remember a specific time or place about something that happened during that time. I learn new things about that transitional period of our lives every time I talk to one of my parents.
And you were there, correct?
I was about a year old when we left, so I don't remember much.
Right.
But, with the stories that my parents and elders tell, it kind of brings me back to that moment because we have several pictures, a few things to remember it. But other than that, I really have no distinct memory of what happened.
So you kind of were that baby in someone's arms.
Yeah, in my grandmother's arms. She picked me up, and my brother was about 6 weeks old. So when I have 4 kids, when I imagine me as a postpartum mother at 6 weeks having to pick up a newborn baby and literally walk through the mountains, it breaks my heart, and it makes me really appreciate my mother so much more for all that she's done and gone through.
How important has it been for folks who are part of the Kurdish community here in Nashville to pass these stories down? Sounds like it's difficult, but it sounds like it also has to be an intentional thing for it to happen.
It does, but it's also necessary. For example, my kids are here. They're privileged with not having to deal with war and trauma and remembering any of those things. And so for me to be able to pass down those stories that my parents tell me is so important for their upbringing because it gives them a sense of this is what my family went through. It gives them a sense of like humbleness and being able to point to some of the things that we have to deal with on a regular basis. And it's very important for my kids to know where we came from. Very important.
Obviously we just listened to this episode, the second episode in the series, and all the episodes, by the way, are out now if you want to listen on your own time, The Country in Our Hearts. You were the cultural advisor throughout. Is there any one part of the series that resonated with you, or you were actually surprised by your own history?
There is, but again, it's like everything in our community is so tight-knit. Like Oran's family, we know them by marriage. Their cousin is married
to... you knew them anyway.
Yeah, we all know each other some way, shape, or form. His older sister is a good friend of mine.
That's kind of beautiful to think about.
It is. In Nashville, it's very difficult to not know someone that's Kurdish here if you are Kurdish. Because
So if I name somebody, you're like, well, of course I know her.
Yeah, either I know her or I know of her, or
Yeah.
one of my siblings knows her, or my parents. Even though Kurds are spread out all over the United States, it's very hard to find someone that you're like, I've never heard of that person. Because living in the refugee camp, living in Kurdistan itself, everyone was connected in some way. And so us being here and being able to live our lives here, still with that connection, is really beautiful.
I know that it's good for me to hear this. I mean, I've even passed it along to, and by this I mean this series, the Country in Our Hearts. I've even passed it along to, folks at my son's school. There's a lot of Kurdish families who attend there, and I thought, this would be helpful just to kind of know this story of how people came to be here. But I'm wondering what the value is to Kurdish families in listening to this. Is it kind of some pride that people are telling this pretty epic tale of yours, or is it also learning about your own history? What's the value to Kurds in Nashville in listening to this with us?
Yeah, I think the value brings a lot of closeness to our community. The majority of us are immigrants, and I know with the political climate around immigrants, it can be very daunting to some folks who have not crossed paths with any sort of immigrant. I think being able to hear our story and see that we've gone through so much trauma and that we've kind of rebuilt our lives here. We're part of the culture of Nashville. We've kind of helped build Nashville over the past 30, 40, even some 50 years. Some Kurds have been here since the 70s and 80s. I think it's important to know that, we belong here too, and that our neighbors help us just as much as we help them. We've made Nashville what it is as well, and I think it's great to be able to tell our stories. Again, Kurds are such great storytellers. This comes from years and years and years of storytelling, and so to have a platform like NPR tell our story is so important for our non-Kurdish neighbors to really get to know us.
Well, thank you for being here. Dilman Yasin was cultural advisor on this project, The Country in Our Hearts. All episodes are out now if you want to listen wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been a special broadcast of This is Nashville, a production of Nashville Public Radio. Liv Lombardi is our technical director. I'm the host, Blake Farmer. And now, let's roll the podcast credits.
The Country in Our Hearts was reported and produced by me, Rose Gilbert. My editor and co-producer was Meribah Knight. Additional editing by Tony Gonzalez, LaTonya Turner, and Rachel Iacovone, with help from Marianna Bacallao, Char, Daston, and Justin Barney. Mack Linebaugh is Nashville Public Radio's Vice President of Audience and supported this project in many ways. Our community and cultural advisors on this project were Dr. David Romano and Dilman Yasin. Sound design was done by Martine Cruz, fact-checking by Daniel Potter, and original logo artwork by Nuveen Barwari. Traditional music was by Arkan Doski, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Special thanks to Paul McAdoo, Jennifer Nelson, and to the village of Chalke and the people there who showed me so much hospitality. The Country in Our Hearts was made possible by the financial support of Nashville Public Radio listeners and special contributions by members Jackie Schrago, Fletcher Burton, and William D. Kenner, MD. Travel was funded in part by the Overseas Press Club, and the project received an important grant from Humanities Tennessee, an independent affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. The findings and conclusions of this podcast do not necessarily represent the views of Humanities Tennessee or of the National Endowment for the Humanities.